Yo, what is up guys, Grim here, and in today's video we are going to be covering the newly reworked Deadeye Ascendancy for the new expansion, Echoes of the Atlas. So of course, Deadeye has received a big rework, and as a bit of a Deadeye fanatic myself, I have played the class multiple times through many leagues. I'd probably say it's getting up there to about 10 league starts with Deadeye for myself. I'm kind of known as the tornado shot guy at this point. I figured I'd throw in my feedback and let you know where Deadeye is at moving forward. So first, a bit of backstory on Deadeye. Generally, it's a fairly niche ascendancy which lends itself to only a couple of builds traditionally with the old ascendancy. Those builds generally were magic find or clear speed based ranged glass cannon archer builds. So stuff like ice shot, lightning arrow, and tornado shot. Generally, they'll have max movement speed or max magic find or some combination of the both with a headhunter or something like that. And they'll just focus on blasting maps apart as quickly as possible to try and maximize the amount of loot they get per hour. And the reason that those were so suitable is because of the massive projectile scaling and the Gathering Winds talent node, which gives you more action speed and movement speed, which is still there and it is still very powerful. Now, the other playstyle that people generally go for Deadeye on is that of a deep delver. They use Icicle Mine. I don't generally play this way, but a lot of people do, and they rely on Pierce nodes and all sorts of other things on the Deadeye. Now, I can't comment too much on that, but we will get into that a little bit at the end. So those are the kind of playstyles that we're looking at here. We're going to look at what the new Deadeye offers those playstyles, or maybe doesn't offer them, and also some new playstyles that are being introduced to the Deadeye Ascendancy. So without further ado, let's get into the changes and see where this beloved Ascendancy has ended up. So to begin with, there are some buffs on the Deadeye tree, just straight up numerical buffs. So we have one projectile added to Endless Munitions. So Endless Munitions up here, this talent here is pretty much a go-to for any Deadeye because we all use projectiles. Traditionally, it was one added projectile, and now it is two added projectiles. So this is going to give you a massive power spike early game when you're using single target abilities like Barrage, or AoE abilities like, tornado shot or ice shot or anything like that. Two additional projectiles is absolutely insane, and it's a welcome buff. In addition to that, we also have a massive buff to far shot. So as you can see here, far shot is this this node here on the right. So generally you'd either go like far shot to Endless Munitions, or you'd go ricochet to Endless Munitions here, this kind of pathing. So you're going to be getting it early on in the story. And what this now does, instead of just giving 30% more at maximum bow range, you now have 60% more damage at maximum bow range, which is very, very good indeed. Now there is a small caveat that was added in, and that is that there is now a 20% less damage to targets close to you. So it's kind of playing to the range kind of aspect of bow. So you want to be at maximum range, you can, to get maximum damage. In addition to that, they also added that projectile barrages have no spread. If you've ever played a bow character with barrage, you'll know that if you try and barrage from range, you're probably going to only hit a quarter or a third of your shots due to the massive shotgun spray that barrage has built into it. I'm assuming that this is going to make it more like a laser pointer so that you can play into the advantages of far shot. So that definitely makes a lot of sense, and it's going to allow you to use barrage from range, kind of promoting that run and gun kind of playstyle instead of getting up there in your face with point blank and just trying to one-shot the mob before it one-shots you, which we've traditionally been doing on Deadeye characters. So moving forward though, there has been some new stuff added as well. So we have lost a few things, but we've also gained some new nodes. So let's go to Rupturing first down here. So Rupturing has been, traditionally it was a more defensive kind of hybrid kind of node, which not too many people took, but you could take in these situations. It would offer you a lot of defense. We'll get into that a bit later when we talk about what was removed. But now it is actually a pure bleed node. So they're offering a new playstyle to Deadeyes and the option to create new Deadeye characters. And those characters will be pure bleed characters. So, you've got your puncture, you've got, your bleed on hit, and stuff like that. You'll be going a bleed kind of playstyle as the Deadeye, and it's based around crit, which the Deadeye definitely excels at. There's plenty of crit multi on the tree, and there's plenty of crit chance. It's very easy to get to 100% crit chance with the Deadeye class. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. So that's going to be a new playstyle that we traditionally didn't have, which is pretty cool. Next up, they've decided to add in some more defensive and utility options to the Deadeye, which we previously didn't really have any pure defense or utility options. We kind of just had leech and evasion, and that was it. So now they've introduced a sort of wind dance mechanic in the form of Wind Ward. So the Deadeye has a mechanic built in that you can get using Gathering Winds, which gives you stacks of Gale Force. They were called something different before, but now they're called Gale Force, and you can stack them up to 10. And once you have 10, you'll get, increased effective tailwind like we normally do on the Deadeye. But now we also have a new talent to spec into that as well. So when we're at max tailwind charges, when we're hit, we will lose all our tailwind charges, but we'll take 30% less damage while at maximum stacks. So this, paired with evasion, dodge, and wind dancer, is going to give you a number of incredible defensive layers in terms of just avoiding damage. So when you actually finally do get hit through your evasion and your dodge, you won't actually get one shot because you have so many less damage taken multipliers, through the Wind Dancer and through the Wind Ward. So definitely pretty cool, and it is going to play into high tier kind of mapping kind of strategies with stuff like Delirium. A lot of that stuff is you just stack evasion and dodge, and if you get hit, you would normally die, but maybe as a Deadeye now you won't die because it's only one hit, then you might live. Which is pretty cool. So a very good defensive option there. The other one we've got here, which is a bit of a utility one, is Focal Point. So it's going to increase the damage, the effectiveness of your mark. So that's going to be Sniper's Mark or Assassin's Mark or something along those lines. And it's also going to reduce the damage that enemies around your mark target does. So in my opinion, this isn't that powerful or useful. Because only rare monsters and unique monsters can be marked, and it doesn't actually reduce the damage that they deal to you, it only reduces the monsters around it. The only application I could see for this personally is that you would use a curse on hit ring or mark on ring or something along those lines. And then you'd make use of that, and you'd have 75% increased effect of that on your target, and then monsters around that would deal less damage. But in terms of an ascendancy point, I think it's kind of on the weak side. It's kind of a lot of micromanaging without that curse on hit, and I don't think it's something that you would use in a fast gameplay kind of pace style as Deadeye. So yeah, not too impressed with Focal Point, but maybe it sees some play in some different utility builds that I haven't come up with yet. So the last one here, which is new, is actually Occupying Force. So this one is a bit interesting. We don't know how it works yet, but essentially it's going to detach your Mirage Archer support gem from your, I guess it's on your shoulders or on your head up here, and it's going to actually anchor it to the ground, I would assume. It's either going to be on the ground or it's going to be moving with you. It's also going to increase the maximum amount of Mirage Archers you can have from 1 to 3, essentially tripling the damage of Mirage Archer, which could be quite powerful. Now the downside, of course, is that you can't actually summon Mirage Archers when you're near Mirage Archers. So you're going to have to kite around, I would assume, to get multiple in the same screen. But once you have them all set up, it could be quite strong, especially with the alternate quality Mirage Archer, which gives an additional 2 projectiles on top of the already buffed projectiles. So you could kind of set up some pretty potent Mirage Archers. Now the downside of this is it doesn't actually really play to the strengths at all of Deadeye. Because generally you put Mirage Archer on your clear skill, which is primarily going to be moving around kind of play style, and you'd be leaving your Mirage Archers around on that clear skill. Very rarely do you put it on your single target setup like Barrage, because generally you're going to get more damage than you would get from this Ascendancy node as well as Mirage Archer from a singular support gem anyway. So I don't know if it plays into the strengths of Deadeye really that much. Now, it would be a different story if the Mirage Archers could move. That would kind of give a brand new playstyle to Deadeye, but I have a feeling that they're going to be anchored to the ground. And if that's the case, I don't really see this node having too much benefit to current Deadeye playstyles, that being the super speed and the Deadeye in the delve kind of section. So yeah, a bit unfortunate there, but maybe there's a new playstyle. So moving forward, we have another adjustment here. We have a new mechanic on Ricochet. So projectiles have 30% chance to be able to chain when colliding with terrain. So this is a pretty interesting mechanic. Essentially, projectiles that would collide with the wall and despawn now have a 30% chance to bounce off the wall and hit the target as like kind of a chained target, which is incredibly powerful in indoor maps like Toxic Sewer and stuff like that. on an ability like Tornado Shot, which traditionally has a massive amount of secondary projectiles, all fly out and hit the wall, they will now come back and converge on the enemy monsters, which is very, very strong and will lend itself to those maps incredibly well. Now, the kind of interesting thing about this is it is a 30% chance, so it's not guaranteed, but also it kind of, again, doesn't really play to the strengths of traditional Deadeye gameplay. So Deadeyes generally choose open layout maps. And the reason for that is because bows have massive range and massive spread on all of their abilities. So you're able to clear open layouts incredibly quickly. And generally, like, smaller layouts are more suited to stuff like Blade Vortex and Cyclone. Now with this, you're actually going to be kind of shaking it up a bit, and it's kind of going to drag you in two places. Like traditionally, Tornado Shot, Ice Shot, open layouts. But now with this ascendancy on Ricochet, you might want to consider going into closed layouts, which is kind of weird. And if you rely on this ascendancy to give you your single target damage, when you're in an open layout, it might feel a little bit weird and really, really bad because you won't have the same damage as you do in closed layouts. So it is kind of a bit of an unreliable ascendancy in my opinion. However, this could be potentially quite strong in the Delve scenario because that's always indoor, and those Icicle-minded Deadeyes could make use of this ascendancy for big single target damage. But I think for the general MFing, zoom kind of Deadeye, I'm not sure that this is too useful because it's kind of fairly inconsistent and doesn't play to its strengths. So those are kind of the buffs and the changes and the new stuff. Let's get into what Deadeye lost for these changes, and then we'll kind of do an overall assessment of the ascendancy and kind of where it's at. Because we didn't kind of go unscathed to get all these new powers. As you can see, a lot of stuff is missing, and we'll touch on that now. So initially, Tailwind has actually been nerfed for everyone. It is no longer 10% action speed, it is now 8% action speed. Now the Deadeye, fortunately enough, has received a buff to its stacking Tailwind buff. It's now 15%, which actually offsets the nerf and still gives you 20% action speed at maximum stacks. So no problems there for the Deadeye. Other classes though will take that 2% action speed nerf, which, you know, it is what it is. So no problems there. Now, the main elephant in the room, the big problem with Deadeye is that it lost a ton of damage off of the Ricochet node. So this here, up here, this Ricochet Ascendancy point, traditionally this has had a more damage multiplier on it, which is 10% more damage for each remaining chain. Now this is an incredible source of damage and is primarily one of the reasons you go Deadeye. It is the main kind of scaling source for Deadeye builds, and without it, it's going to lose a considerable amount of its single target and AoE damage. The reason for this is that Deadeye builds traditionally use chain in their AoE setups. Where is it here? We've got Awaken Chain. And as you can see here, supported gems chained 3 additional times. So that's 30% more damage just from that one skill gem that we'll be losing. So you're going to no longer really feel good about investing in additional chains because you're going to now take the less damage multiplier on chain on the chin with no benefits for investing in it. This generally offset the downsides of chain and made it a very powerful support gem to include in your AoE setup, but now you're no longer really going to be encouraged to do that, and you're probably going to have to look into things like Pierce, which is significantly less powerful, and you may actually have to invest in something like an explosion chest or something to really kind of like supplement that AoE clear that we're going to be losing. So a massive nerf to AI, to Deadeye's kind of like clear potential and cleanup and kind of smoothness of play. Now, in addition to that, Deadeye also invested in potentially a chain quiver at the very end game, and it does have the chain off of Ricochet itself, as well as replica Voidwalkers. So overall, we're losing up to 30% damage on our single target. So that's a massive amount of single target on Barrage. It's equal to the, it actually exceeds the buff that we received from the far shot without any conditionals. So we actually lost damage overall, and we now have new conditionals that we have to adhere to with the 20% less damage multiplier on far shot at close range. So that's definitely not what you want to be looking for in a Ascendancy rework. So definitely pretty rough. 60%, up to 60% more damage lost on our AoE clear spells, whether that be Ice Shot or Tornado Shot, which is a massive hit. Massive hit. It's close to like a third of our damage just in the drain. Definitely pretty unfortunate indeed. So what else has been changed though? So additionally, Farshot currently has 30% increased projectile speed, which is pretty nice. It kind of makes the Deadeye a lot more snappy, and it increases the range that tornado shot projectiles can actually travel, which is very, very powerful. Now, we're actually losing this as well in the new expansion. They're removing this from Farshot, and we're no longer going to have this. So yeah, we're going to lose that projectile speed. That is definitely unlucky, and it's going to nerf tornado shot more than it already is. It feels bad. So next up, what are we losing? Losing some stuff on endless munitions. So the new node endless munitions, if you recall, just has 2 additional projectiles. We're losing the 200 accuracy on here. So that is definitely annoying. You may have to spec into that or find it on an Abyss Jewel now. And we're also losing 50% increased AoE. This is almost equivalent to an increased AoE gem. This is an incredible nerf, in fact, which is really unfortunate. So this is going to nerf all sorts of things. It's going to nerf anyone who was using an AoE tagged spell, like Rain of Arrows. You know, if you were using some sort of galvanic arrow or something like that, that's going to be a nerf there too. But also it nerfs Explosion Chest on Deadeye, which a lot of people do like to use at the very high end. So that's an incredible nerf for that, massive nerf. It also nerfs Herald of Ice, which is unfortunate. And it really does reduce the overall utility and quality of life and cleanup of the Deadeye Ascendancy. So definitely unfortunate to lose that, a big loss there. Lastly, on the nerf side of things, unfortunately, we're losing 1,000 evasion as well from Gathering Winds. So just to put that in perspective, I mean, my chess piece doesn't even have 1,000 evasion. So we're losing a massive amount of our evasion, which is very, very unfortunate. If you're using Queen of the Forest or anything like that for maximum movement speed, you're going to absolutely feel the sting on this one. It really hurts. So yeah, definitely unfortunate to lose all that evasion and accuracy. Yeah, definitely bad luck, I guess. In addition to that, we're also losing 2 nodes down here. Now, powerful precision is traditionally taken by deep delvers. They really, really like that increased crit and pierce. However, this is unfortunately not going to be present in the new expansion, so that's bad luck. And next, we're also losing fast and deadly. So traditionally this isn't the most powerful, and at the absolute endgame you don't take this as a Deadeye, but early on this can be great to kind of supplement your accuracy when you don't have a lionized glare and you don't have heavy investment in accuracy. So this allows you to get, you know, some solid damage, some pretty good solid damage, but also 50% more accuracy, which is essentially going to take you to that hit cap, which is really, really strong. So unfortunately we're losing that too. Definitely a very good early game option. Finally, we're also losing traditional Rupture. Now, the really important thing here to notice with Rupture is obviously it's got a large amount of damage, but the main reason people took Rupture was the plus 30 life when you hit a bleeding enemy. Essentially, this gives you a Val Pack effect. When you hit a monster which is bleeding, you essentially bounce back to full health because you have so many projectiles which are overlapping, doing AoE or chaining and stuff like that. So we're essentially losing a pseudo Val Pact that you had the option to spec into if you wanted that kind of defense or effect, which is definitely unfortunate because there's nothing quite like that on the tree. The only alternative to that is getting something like you know, an insane Shaper Ring or Elder Ring or something like that with life gain on hit. Definitely unlucky to lose that too. So overall, where is Deadeye sitting? Well, Deadeye absolutely has more defensive options and definitely some interesting new options with utility, and that probably will make it overall more viable for a lot more builds, and it'll probably make it a lot more viable for hardcore as well, I imagine, with that Wind Ward. It also has some kind of like new interesting kind of gimmicks with the Mirage Archers. I'm sure someone's gonna have a lot of fun with that. And it also does allow it to specialize in indoor maps, like kind of some crazy bouncing shenanigans. I'm sure someone is gonna have a ton of fun with that. And they've also added a bit of damage to it here and there with the +1 projectiles and the far shot buff. However, it doesn't essentially play to how it plays now. It doesn't play to its strength currently. And a lot of builds, like for example this one here I played in Harvest, are going to be significantly nerfed, unfortunately, as a result of the new rework. It's losing a significant amount of damage, projectile speed, you know, options in terms of utility and early game, defense in terms of just straight up evasion, and AoE and all that kind of stuff like that. And now you really aren't encouraged to play point blank, for better or for worse. This is a massive damage multiplier that you're no longer really going to want to take because you hit a 20% less damage multiplier when you're close and you lose your 60%. So you don't want to play close anymore. So yeah, definitely a massive shift for the Deadeye away from the kind of zoom chain everything in the map kind of build that we've come to know and love. I would say it's probably heading in a more niche direction with the bleed kind of stuff like that. And I don't really see too much reason for a build to go Deadeye now as the kind of bow headhunter kind of build. You're probably much more likely to go Pathfinder, Raider, or Assassin, and leverage some of those more damage multipliers on there, because Deadeye really doesn't offer those much as it used to. Really, it's just got projectiles, which really at maximum gear or high end gear have massive fall off because you're already shooting like, I mean, massive amounts of projectiles. So look, here we are. Like I'm already shooting like 9 or 10 here with my flasks up. You'll probably see. So you don't need that many projectiles, and one projectile isn't really going to offset losing 60% more damage. But that's kind of how it is. So yep, that's the Deadeye, guys. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed my kind of feedback here. Plenty of new things to try on it if you kind of want to be new to Deadeye. But if you're expecting the same old, unfortunately you're probably going to want to look somewhere else, as the Deadeye isn't really what it used to be in terms of this massive like arrow chaining machine with massive glass cannon damage. It's definitely been shifted a bit away from that. But all is well in Path of Exile. Still super excited for the new expansion. I'll see you guys in the next one. Cheers.